Welcome into the Hard Count. It is Wednesday, August 7th, 2024, the last one on the face of the planet. We're juiced, man. It really feels like we're already into the swing of college football season. Hope it feels that way for y'all as well. Fall camp is rolling all across the country. Got more intel for y'all on tomorrow's show. Had intel across the country on yesterday's show. On today's show, though, I want us to look towards the end of the season. The college football playoff is going to be unlike anything we have ever seen, and so that got the gears turning a little bit this morning. You know, we took our caffeine pill, got the 200 milligrams straight to the dome, right into the bloodstream. Started thinking, man, what would be the most fun playoff hypotheticals that we could realistically see when it comes to that 12-team dance? Little sneak peek of this one. LSU and Notre Dame. Little BK return to South Bend. I'm just saying crazier things have happened. Would be just like college football to serve us up some delicious storylines and give us a blockbuster like that, as well as a number of other intriguing number of games that we could have when it comes to the college football playoff. I put the call out to action as well on my Twitter page. I guess it was a week or so ago now. I asked y'all, hey, what is a absolute truth in college football that you would stand behind? Got a number of great responses from y'all. You already heard my absolutes a couple weeks ago, or last week rather, on our show. I guess it was, I want to say maybe it was a Thursday show. Doesn't matter. Regardless, get into your absolutes on this upcoming show. Oklahoma fans, let's talk, man. I think we maybe had a little bit of a misunderstanding of sorts when it comes to our record predictions, because I sat here and I told you I think Oklahoma in 2024 is going to go 6-6. As I've said many times on this show about Oklahoma, context is key. Context is crucial, man. We have to have the right context when we discuss Oklahoma. In the same way, I think we need to have the right context when it comes to my prediction and when it comes to discussing this whole deal around Oklahoma. So for the good folks in Norman, man, let's just have a good back and forth. Let's have a good discussion, a good heart-to-heart of sorts, because as of late, my mentions have been on fire, and shouts to y'all for the passion and for getting after me on Twitter. It's always appreciated, always welcomed. Record predictions, speaking of those, we got a couple more for you today. Got a prediction on Florida State. Got a prediction on Auburn and what they're going to finish at in 2024. We got a lot to talk about. Like I said, college football season is here. We got 400 give or take hours until we have week 0 actually happening in Ireland. It's going to be awesome. You're going to hear that Reese Davis monologue over however many screaming fans in Dublin, Ireland. Let's lock in. Let's have a tremendous College Football Wednesday, and let's make sure that we attack today, all right? So, really quickly, before we get started here, I mentioned it on yesterday's show. If you're looking for a little extra juice, if you're looking for a little bit of extra something to get you dialed in for this season, you're like, hey, I feel good about my team. I think I know what's going on, but like I want to take it to the next level. I want to be elite this year as a college football fan. Best way to do that is getting a subscription to on3.com. JD, I don't know if I want to spend the money to get into that. Like, good news. You use code JD1. It is $1 for your first month. Okay, so if you are a Florida State fan and you want to be dialed into all things fall camp right now, War Chant, the On3 Florida State site, they got you covered. $1 to read all the good stuff over there from Ira Schofel. Maybe you're just a recruiting junkie. You want to take that next step, right? As we always do. We always want to get better at our craft. $1. Okay, using code JD1 for your first month, you get all the access to what Steve Wiltfong is dropping and Chad Simmons is dropping. So make sure you do that, okay? Bottom line, make sure you do that and get as into the weeds as you can when it comes to everything in the college football recruiting and college football landscape heading into this season. My computer's talking to me here. All right, cool. We got that muted. We're off to the races now. All right, let's jump right into it, man. What are the most intriguing college football playoff hypotheticals that we could be seeing in this year's version of the college football playoff? There's a lot of them, man. And the way that I broke this down, I'll be honest, man, we went heavy on storylines. And there may not be a game that has bigger storylines around it, if we get it, than LSU going to Notre Dame. Now, that'd be massive on a number of levels for what it would mean happened during the 2024 season. First, it would mean that Riley Leonard, the transfer quarterback from Duke to Notre Dame, was a hit and a half. And I've been very vocal. I like Riley Leonard. I am a little bit concerned about his consistency. Now, if they make it to the college football playoff, it means he balled the heck out. And if they host a playoff game, that's the key caveat here. If Notre Dame hosts a playoff game, that means they likely went either 11-1 to 12-0. 10-2, I'm not saying it's impossible, but you feel a lot better about this game happening in South Bend if you have that kind of record if you're Notre Dame. Now, if LSU ends up in the college football playoff, man, it means they fixed that defense. It means Brian Kelly looked at that defensive staff, said, nope, not good enough. Blake Baker, get in here. Bo Davis, get in here. And those individuals were able to maximize the personnel in-house in Baton Rouge. Because we've said it before, there's still some good players in Baton Rouge now, regardless of what those numbers would tell you or lead you to believe from last year's squad. Still some good players, man. Harold Perkins, we've seen what he can be when he takes over games. You saw his freshman season. Haven't seen it enough since then, but I think you see a change in that this year. That would obviously be a factor in LSU making the college football playoff. Probably puts them at that 10-2 mark if we get this kind of game. Now, the storylines here are just, creme de la creme. The obvious one, you got Brian Kelly's return to South Bend. It's no secret. It was one of the most well-publicized breakups in college football, right up there with Lincoln Riley in Oklahoma. Like when Brian Kelly left Notre Dame, there was no love lost. There was no farewell tour. There was no, man, thank you for everything. It was like, see ya. Get out of here. There was also some objection to the timing of it all because some folks felt like, well, hey, Notre Dame, they could still maybe find their way into the college football playoff. I think that's a bit overblown. But can you just imagine for a second Brian Kelly running out there in South Bend for a playoff game? The way that fan base would receive him, or wouldn't receive him, rather. Also, the fact that we would have two of the premier brands in this sport that are both starving to get back to the top of the mountain of the college football world. Notre Dame, man, they don't play in a conference. Like, they judge their success by national championships. And so to get in the college football playoff and to get a win in the college football playoff over an SEC opponent, over their former head coach, like, that'd be something else. I'll just say that right now. Also, you zoom out even further. Like, these are two coaches now between Marcus Freeman and Brian Kelly going into their third year. Year three, your third year on the job anywhere is a show me year. Show me what we're getting here. Show me what we've invested all this time, all these resources. Show me what we are going to eventually get from you here. There's no more excuses for, oh, well, we're still building it. We're still finding our footing. No, at this point in the game, you have had enough time to sign your name off next to every single part of this football team, regardless of how you slice it. Marcus Freeman, Brian Kelly, I think have both done a great job, but a first-round exit for either of those guys would be unacceptable. So, man, full transparency, I hope we get this game for the reasons I just mentioned, and it'd be unbelievable. The week leading up to that would be unbelievable. Here's another a fun playoff hypothetical we could get. And full transparency, for those of y'all that have watched this show for the last the last week, because we did our prediction finale last week, gave you our national championship pick, Oregon and Georgia. This is our national championship game. Now, I'm cool if we get this any other time throughout the college football playoff. If it happens in Atlanta, that would be very poetic because that was when these two teams played last to start the 2022 season, I believe it was. This would be a callback to that first game that they played. Again, whether it's in Atlanta or whether it's in Athens, whatever. Oregon and Georgia would be a callback to Dan Lanning's first game as the head coach at Oregon. And now, if you remember correctly, Georgia absolutely just thwacked Oregon. It wasn't even close. The Dan Lanning era in Eugene got off to a very, very bumpy start. Very, very unkind awakening. Bo Nix went out there. He threw multiple interceptions. Oregon was just outmatched in every single facet of the game. And after that game, Kirby Smart took the podium and told everybody and their mama, he's like, listen, man, Dan Lanning would never tell you this, but we won this game today because we had better players than them. He wasn't talking trash. He was just stating a fact. Now, you fast forward the tape, I think Oregon has closed that gap substantially. I don't know if they're on par with Georgia from a roster talent perspective just yet, but they have definitely done all they can and then some to be in the neighborhood of where Georgia is right now. And so if Oregon's able to be in this game, this is a chance now for Dan Lanning to cement himself as one of those guys in the college football space. Because we talk a lot about him being like the future of the sport and him being the next Kirby and all those things. You want to warrant that kind of praise? You want to warrant that kind of notoriety? You go beat Kirby. You go beat Georgia. And to the same token now, for Kirby Smart, man, we talk a lot about him being the next Saban and him being, one of the Mount Rushmore kind of guys in the sport. You know how you do that? You go win a third national championship. So whether this game is for the national title or not, it would definitely be on the path to a national championship appearance at the very least. Kirby Smart's got 2 national titles. Winning a third, I think, changes the conversation around him. Because 2 is great. I mean, a lot of coaches, man, golly, would do unspeakable things to win 1 national championship. If Kirby Smart wins a third, he enters that conversation with a Barry Switzer, an Urban Meyer, a Darrell Royal, like very, very hallowed names in the college football head coaching space. So I'm not telling you this game would be for the national championship, although that is our prediction. If we just got this game in the college football playoff period, you got former coaches going against, former coaching staff members. Dan Lanning used to coach for Kirby Smart, bottom line. And they were also both from the Saban tree. That would be phenomenal. That'd be chef's kiss. We would love to see that. That would also, I think, say a lot about the way that Oregon has progressed since Dan Lanning has gotten to Eugene. Here's one that I'm really excited about if we were to get it, and I think it's very possible that we do. What if you got Ole Miss and Clemson in the college football playoff? This would be a true test of 2 different ways that they choose to skin their respective cats. Now, I'd love for this game to be at Clemson, purely because we got to go to Clemson last year, and that atmosphere for a noon kick against Florida State was absolutely on fire. This means if Clemson makes the college football playoff, they got the offense right. People like me questioning Cade Klubnik, questioning Garrett Riley, and then they get a whole year under their belt from last year and progress into year 2, and they get it right. They have the offensive skill players to make it happen. Bada bing, bada boom, we're rolling. That in itself, I think, would speaks volumes to the way that Dabo Swinney has recruited and the way that they've done things internally there. Now, for Ole Miss, if they make the college football playoff, and we've been very transparent, we feel great about Ole Miss going into 2024, it means the defensive acquisitions they made via the transfer portal paid off big time. Paid off exactly how they drew it up. Walter Nolan from A&M, Princely Umanmielen from Florida. I mean, they hit how they were supposed to, and Ole Miss is now one of those big boys in the college football landscape. Not just a big boy in the sense, well, yeah, they'll contend. Yeah, they'll be in the conversation. Like, no, they're in the college football playoff, and you got to deal with them. You would obviously be a big fan of that if you are in Oxford. But going back to what I said at the top of this thing, man, the different ways these programs operate, they could not be more night and day. Like, Clemson pretty much doesn't even look at the transfer portal except for a couple of exceptions. Ole Miss has taken 65 transfers in the last 3 years. 65. So I think the result of this game, whether it's fair or not, would kind of be our definition of both these teams moving forward. Like, if Clemson is able to beat Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin, who's been the portal king more or less the last couple of seasons, you say, well, I guess Dabo Swinney's way works. Maybe Dabo Swinney and his whole deal with we're going to build it internally, we're going to recruit our guys and just kind of develop them from there. Maybe there is more salt to that than we have maybe given him credit for over the course of the last couple of seasons. But if Ole Miss wins, you say, okay, well, now you can portal your way to the tier 1 of the college football world. And honestly, I think it would reflect even more poorly on Clemson, saying you got passed by a team who has leaned on the portal because you have chosen to not use the portal. So there would be a lot of talking points coming out of that game based on the result, but the juice from that one would be, no pun intended for Lane Kiffin's dog, the juice from that one would be exceptional. Now here's one more for you. Alabama at Florida State. Think back to last year's Selection Sunday, and y'all already know where I'm going with this. Florida State, undefeated, ACC champion, assuming they've done everything they need to get into the college football playoff. Alabama just beat Georgia the night before, and we were in Atlanta, and I was feeling perplexed going into that game, or going into, that Selection Sunday coming out of that game, because I had just seen Alabama with my own 2 eyes beat who I believe was the best team in college football in Georgia. And I'm like, listen, man, I don't know how you draw it up. I don't know how it makes sense on paper, but Alabama's one of the best 4 teams. At the same time, you're like, well, Florida State, man, they've done everything they can. They've done everything they've been asked to do when it comes to qualifying for that college football playoff. So what do? Florida State, man, they still have a bitter taste in their mouth from missing the college football playoff. They still feel some type of way, and they should. I would if I were a part of that team. I'm not commenting on what was right or what was wrong. We've already done that a fair amount. But I think if you get this game, you're able to at least have some sort of closure on last year's issue. Now, if Kalen DeBoer makes the college football playoff with Alabama year one, I think you already check the box for yourself and say, okay, great. Optics are stable. Alabama's going to continue to be Alabama. Kalen DeBoer is going to be fine. If Florida State makes the college football playoff, similarly, you're saying Mike Norvell's that guy. Mike Norvell has been that guy, but to do it with the 83rd returning production unit in the country out of 134 teams, with all that you lost last year, and you just boss up and keep the main thing, keep it moving forward, like, obviously, that would do a lot to have no hitch. It would be tremendous for Mike Norvell, okay? But this game itself, be personal. It would be very, very personal. And I said this before, but if we got Alabama at Florida State, like this game is played in Tallahassee, that place would be, that place would be going to the moon. It would be one of those atmospheres that I think you could probably only try and describe if you had been there, because your broadcast copy, your camera, your Skycam, whatever, it would be vibrating. It'd be shaking. I would love to see that game. I get that it's not last year's squad at Alabama. It's not the same, pound for pound operation at Florida State either, but just to have those two fan bases going at each other leading into the college football playoff would be a thing of beauty. So those to me are very, very, very real potential college football playoff hypotheticals. We actually have both Georgia and Oregon and Alabama at Florida State meeting up in the college football playoff. So no matter how you slice it, man, playoff hypotheticals, I don't think it's ever too early for us to just take a peek at what that could look like. And college football season, again, it's here. So let's lock in, man. We'll lock in together. Hey, if you're watching live, 2 quick requests. 1, like the video. Arguably more importantly, subscribe to the channel. I just told y'all, man, we're less than 500 hours from college football games being played. Hours, not days, hours. Okay, so don't want y'all to miss anything. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're locked in. And we're going to attack this season together. All right, this is not a one-man go-alone kind of. This is all of us together, locking arms, and just attacking this college football season. So to do that, make sure you're subscribed right here to this On3 YouTube channel, and we'll have ourselves the best college football season in history. Now, another thing I'm going to ask you to do, not necessarily while you're live right now, but just at your leisure, follow me on the socials, Instagram and Twitter at JD Piquel, because that's a great way for us to interact. Like this segment right here, I put out the call to action. I asked y'all, man, what is, in your opinion, in absolute truth about college football? I mean, we got a lot of great answers, a lot of great feedback, but one that I got from y'all was from Ian. He said the title game should be on a Saturday night. And I read this one, and my legs started twitching. My palms got a little bit sweaty. This got me going, man. Because if you've watched this show, you know this is an issue. This is a topic now that is very, very near and dear to our hearts. Ian, you're 100% on the money, brother. 100% on the money. And the folks that aren't in the college football community and on the college football bubble, kind of just driving by this issue of the national title game being on a Monday, and they say, well, of course it can't be on a Saturday. It's when the NFL playoffs are being played. Hear me very clearly when I say this. I do not care. I do not care 1 ounce, 1 iota about when the NFL playoffs are supposed to be or when they want to be. The NFL playoffs, the NFL in general, is a Sunday sport. They play the majority of their games on Sunday. The NFL also has made a great decision to be a Monday sport in addition. College football is a Saturday sport. Well, but JD, the ratings won't be as good. Again, 1, I don't care. Even if I did care, do you think that maybe the national title game would have better ratings if you were to put it on a Saturday, the day that typically the majority of its audience is able to enjoy it? I'm not telling you that the playoffs for the NFL would have a lesser rating than the national title game. Not my point. But I do think it's worth noting that if you want to really get a good gauge for it, put the Saturday sport the biggest game of the Saturday sport on a Saturday. It's literally the biggest game of the year. And you change the day of the week on which you're going to consume that game makes no sense to me. Caveat here, a little subplot to keep an eye on. I think that when you talk about the national title game here in the future, you're going to have this is the part that I think is like kind of awkward to talk about, but I think you're going to have more big brands that are going to draw a bigger audience. And I think Washington and Michigan, if you're a college football fan, you're dialed in anyway. Like, you're watching that game regardless. However, if you put Michigan and Alabama, Michigan and Georgia, Michigan and another big blue blood brand, they would have to earn their way there, obviously. I think that would draw a better number if the TV rating thing is your concern. In the 12-team playoff, I think you're going to get a lot more of those big brands playing each other. I think it's going to be a lot less of the Washingtons or the TCUs. Just my feel on it. I'm not saying I'm for or against it. I'm just saying keep an eye on that number, put it on a Saturday, and we'll revisit that whenever that happens. But Ian, you're 100% right, man. The national title game being on a Monday, ridiculous. Put the Saturday biggest game for that sport on a Saturday. All right, we move on. Andrew hit us with the great one. He said, rivalries are the true foundation of the sport. I think Andrew is 100% onto something here. I think rivalries are absolutely a part of the foundation of the sport. I think if you had to show someone, if you had like one opportunity, one moment, would you seize it or would you just let it slip? Shout out Marshall Mathers. I think the thing that we're talking about here is if you had one chance to show somebody why college football is special, you had one chance, you would show them a rivalry game. You would show them Michigan-Ohio State. You would show them the Iron Bowl. You would show them, Florida State, Florida. Like, you would go down the list here. Any number of rivalries, I think, is what best embodies why college football is so different. College football, the differentiator for us is the rivalries. That is the calling card. Like, to me, I think that is the standard across sports when you talk about rivalries. Like, they compare NFL rivalries, the Raiders and the Chiefs, whoever else, I guess Falcons and Bucks, Falcons and Panthers, for some NFC South love there. They compare a big rivalry in the NFL to college rivalries. Why? Because the passion, the pride, the emotion is turned up all the way through the roof. And there's also a part of this where, like, it's hard to really articulate. It's hard to really put into words to do it justice. Like, just go. If you can find the dollars to go and be a part of one of those experiences, it'll blow you away. It's one of those things, like, you kind of have to be there to experience in fullness. But, like, we were at Michigan-Ohio State a couple years ago. Had never been in an atmosphere like that. The buzz is electric. The people are all the way dialed in. Like, it is college football turned up all the way through the roof. Because the things that we love about college football, the things that you would also argue are foundational to the sport, those things, I think, come most alive at a rivalry game. The pageantry. I mean, you're bringing it when it's Michigan-Ohio State. You're bringing it when it's Alabama-Auburn. If you're the band, Script, Ohio is incredible. You see the most shots of Script, Ohio, I believe at least, whenever you got Ohio State, Michigan. Okay? Tailgating. Let's be real here. Tailgate. You don't think you're going to stay up a little bit later for your tailgate? You should get out there a little bit earlier for your tailgate when it's your rival? I think you would. The emotion, the investment, the pride, it's all the way dialed up. And also, we got Texas A&M and Texas this year. I'm just saying, I think that Andrew is on the money when it comes to rivalries being a foundational piece to what this sport is and why it's so incredible. Now, here's one more, kind of more football X and O centric for you. Graham, he hit us up. His college football absolute truth is that college football is still played from the inside out. Great lines, speaking to the offensive and defensive line, break games. This isn't the NFL where everyone is a top 1%er. Talent chasms, big word there, chasm, are everywhere. People in media overvalue returning skill players because they recognize the names, but contenders are built in the trenches. I mean, Graham could drop the mic there if he wants to. Like, he's 100% right there. That is 1,000% an absolute truth. Tale's old as time, man. Outside of football, man, it's just physics. Big people will move small people. If my offensive line can't dominate you for 4 quarters, game, set, match. Look at the most recent national champions. Michigan. multiple offensive linemen in the NFL. Georgia, the 2 years before that, dominant. Offensive line and defensive line. Over the last 7 years, the national champion allowed 3 yards a carry on average. They rushed for, on average, right around 5 yards a carry. That's the formula. That is the formula. Now, I think it would also be wise for us to add this caveat as well as college football continues to change and shift and adapt. As we go to the 12-team model, you are going to have more matchups where if you're a Georgia or you're an Ohio State or you're a Michigan or you're a Texas and you have that very, very clear line of scrimmage advantage 9 times out of 10 throughout the year, you're going to run into more situations where there is an equal talent level, an equal size level. Not saying every time, but I think to win a national championship, you're going to run into more equal lines of scrimmage. So to win the national championship going forward, while the skill players, returning production and all that could be overblown a little bit, I think having elite quarterback play is what changes the game. Because 3 of those 4 games, you may have an equal talent level on the line of scrimmage. So what's the difference maker there? Yeah, I guess to some degree it's big on big. Shout out Migos, how you go big on big. But I think even more importantly, it's the quarterback play. Can your quarterback string enough games together in that playoff run and be special and elevate you where things are maybe a stalemate on the line of scrimmage? That's what I think is going to be crucial going forward in the college football playoff. We said it a few times too when you talk about the way that the college football playoff is evolving. I mean, we've not talked down on the NFL, but we've sort of had this take for a while, man. We like college football because it's college football, not because it's the NFL. I digress. The NFL, you see those teams with the superior quarterback play make runs in the playoffs and win the Super Bowl. Same thing with the college football playoff right now. It's not just a win 1 game, win 2 games with the national champion. It is, okay, go on a run here for a 16, 17 game season, and then you win the national championship. How do you do that? Great quarterback play at the right time. So the big people move small people, 1,000% an absolute truth in the sport today. In addition to that, having elite quarterback play, I think, is what's going to get you over the hump in the key moments, especially in the college football playoff. But y'all had some great answers, man. Again, on Twitter, at JD Pickell. If you call it X, phenomenal. Same user handle, at JD Pickell. Go ahead and follow me there and also contribute to this conversation. I'll retweet this. I want to hear your absolute truths in the college football world, and we will continue to unpack those on future shows. So there was, we're not going to talk about this in depth right now because we're still waiting for more information. C.J. Baxter, running back for Texas, going to be the bell cow for them this year, had a knee injury, undergoing an MRI. At the time of us being live, we don't know what the extent of that is. When we have something definitive, if there's something to talk about, we'll talk about it. Right now, though, I don't want to speculate and do a whole conversation together because I don't think there's a ton of benefit to that. But just want to let y'all know we're monitoring it at the time of us being live. No new intel. And, of course, we hope that everyone's as healthy as possible. No injuries across the college football world going forward into the 2024 season. So I hope C.J. Baxter is okay. Hope that MRI comes back clean and that Texas has their guy in the backfield. All right? So we did and we have been doing record predictions for a myriad of different teams. I want us to talk about a couple of teams today, though. Let's start with Florida State. What is their record going to be in 2024? Now, Vegas has got them at over under 9.5 wins. Vegas also now has Florida State as the best odds to win the ACC in 2024. So Vegas is saying, we like Florida State, not sure about the ACC right now, new pieces. Over under 9.5 feels fair-ish. Okay, so what do we think about Florida State? We'll give you our thoughts right now. But if you're a Florida State fan, make sure you're subscribed right here to the On3 YouTube channel. College football, nothing but college football every single day. If you are a sicko about Florida State football, if you're a sicko about college football, welcome home. Make sure you're subscribed. It is college football and nothing but the way that you want it discussed, the way that you want it talked about. All right, so lock in here. We appreciate y'all in advance for making that happen. So over under 9.5 wins, what do we think about that? What is this year about for Florida State? It's probably a good place to start at, man. I think for Florida State and for Mike Norvell in general, like this is a boss-up kind of year. This is the year where you can, if you do what you're capable of doing, if you win the state, if you win the conference, you can kind of stand there and just flex on them real quick and say, yep, we're that team. We lost all these pieces. We lost all these dudes to the NFL, and we're still that team in this state. We're still that team in this conference. And great coaches, great programs, not programs, great programs, they stand the test of change. Because it's inevitable. In college football, the players are going to graduate. The players are going to go to the league. Players are going to hit the portal. As Florida State continues to have success, they got a lot of coaches on that staff that are going to take other jobs, probably elevations for them. Like I think Alex Atkins is going to be a head coach here in the not-too-distant future, just my feel on it. There's going to be change. But the programs and the coaches, the head coaches that are able to adapt, the results and the standards don't change. Their way of doing things is refined to the very last detail, and they're able to squeeze every single ounce of potential out of their roster, out of their staff. That is the goal for this team. That's what great coaches do. It's what Saban did for forever. It's what Kirby's doing right now. Florida State fans aren't going to love hearing this because this is a guy you've beaten the last 2 years. Brian Kelly has done this at a lot of different places. Mike Norvell is doing this right now, and this is the task at hand for them in 2024. The makeup of this team is interesting because if you go over to warchant.com, again, JD1, $1 for your first month to get all the access to all the content they're doing over there. Irish O'Fell and the team crushing it. The feel around Florida State, it's a less established roster because of who you have now plugged in at quarterback, because of the guys that maybe didn't play as much last year that will step into larger roles, because of the production you lost. But at the same exact time, it is every bit, if not more talented and more deep than last year's squad that won the ACC. So I think when you talk about Florida State and their approach in 2024, maybe it's less settled, yes, but I think it's going to be every bit as gritty. The formula for them will be we are going to punch you in the freaking mouth every single snap, every single game. That's our identity. Like, they're going to have a lot of haymakers that they can throw at you. Defense is going to be leading this unit forward. No way around it. That is the calling card for them. Shaheem Brown, they love what they're seeing from him at the safety position right now during fall camp. Patrick Payton's an absolute freak show coming off the edge. Marvin Jones Jr. is another freak show, former 5-star from Georgia transferring in there. They got some dudes up front. All right, make no mistake about it. They will be physical at the point of attack. That running back room is deep. That O-line is experienced. You're brought in DJU, as good as you think he's going to be or as bad as you think he's going to be, the reality is for Florida State, you don't need him to be Superman. All right, so as bad as you think he's going to be if you're hating on Florida State this year, more power to you, but he doesn't have to light it up. He just has to be efficient and take care of the football. The big thing with Florida State, I mentioned the haymakers. The key to success for them, to getting the over on that win total, to making the college football playoff, to winning the conference will be, can you perfect your haymaker, which is the physical brand of football, running the ball downhill, attacking on defense, being the enforcer, hammering out the nail, all those cliches, but can you also have a jab to go with it? That's the key ingredient. Because DJU, at multiple times, they will ask him to convert a 3rd and long. That's college football for you. When you're down by 3, when you're up by 4, and you got to put the game away, can you convert a 3rd and long? We're going to see. So the jab is DJU's progress and the options they have for him pushing the ball downfield. Malik Benson, he's going to be wide receiver 1. Okay, no way around it. Who do they have after him? Kyle Morlock, the big tight end, they love him. I think there's some young bucks as well, like Elijah Moore, they're excited about. Who's that second passing option? And how consistent are they? Right? We're going to find out. Let's go game by game here, though, for Florida State, man. Week 0, you got Georgia Tech, Dublin, Ireland. I hope in some way, form, or fashion we get some, Irish icons somehow involved in this game. Get Bono out there. Get Conor McGregor out. Do something to involve the who's who of Ireland in this game. Would love that. Guest picker, they may have announced it already, but I don't know. If you haven't announced your guest picker, get Bono out there. I would love to see Bono or The Edge out there from U2 picking games. It is what it is. I digress. That's a win. I love Georgia Tech. Think they're going to be good this year. Florida State, too much. They beat them in the opener in week 0. You got Boston College, club dub. Play Memphis, another win. You get Cal, thankfully at home this year if you're Florida State. Going to Ireland and then going to Cal Berkeley for a game, their frequent flyer miles are through the roof if you're a Florida State fan. So at that point, you're rolling. You're undefeated. Very, very trappy game now at SMU. This is the game where if you're the offense, it's like, all right, we got to be dialed in, boys. Not only are we going on the road, but you're playing a team in Rhett Lashley's offense and Preston Stone at quarterback that has averaged 37 points a game their 2 years there as a staff. Like, they're going to force you to keep pace. I'm not saying they're going to score 37 on Florida State, but I do think it's reasonable to assume that the offense is going to have a better output than they've had leading up to that game, or at least their best output, as good an output as they've had. So that'll be a good one, but I do think you win that football game. Now, here's one that's going to be a massive game. Massive game. You got Clemson. This is the DJU Bowl. Have to believe it'll be very personal for him, whether he's going to say it out loud or not. There's got to be some way about him feeling like, hey, man, this is the school that thought I wasn't good enough to play there anymore. And, I mean, everybody makes their own decisions for themselves and tries to do what's best for their football team. I don't think you fault Dabo Swinney for going with Cade Klubnik. At the same time, I don't think you fault DJU for feeling like, all right, I have something to prove in this game. A little chip on the shoulder. It'll be in Tallahassee. It'll be rocking. This is the game where I think Florida State not just needs a great performance from DJU, that's obvious, but I think physicality-wise, we've known Clemson to kind of be that bully on the block in the ACC the last couple of years. Like, that's kind of been their calling card when Brent Venables was the DC there, the way they've operated on the offensive line. That's kind of been Clemson's calling card. And so for Florida State, in this game, you have to be the more physical outfit. Sounds pretty simplistic, sounds pretty straightforward. Football is a simple game made complex by stupid people. It is simple. Can you be the more physical team on that day? I believe Florida State can, and I believe in this game they solidify themselves as one of those top 2 teams in the conference. They, again, prove a point. They're better than Clemson at this point. It's not me down on Clemson. I think it's more so props to Mike Norvell and what he's done there. Florida State gets a massive win in the DJU Bowl over Clemson. They stay undefeated. You go to Duke. Mike Elko is no longer there. Manny Diaz now running the show. Riley Leonard is no longer in Durham, North Carolina. Florida State wins that game. A little bit trappy as well because you got Miami the next week. We'll see. But anyway, you beat Duke. You go to Miami. I think you lose this game. Now, we're sitting here in August, so obviously we'll pick this game again when it gets here. But I think that the Cam Ward effect for Miami is real. I think that he is a guy that can elevate them in this game, even though I think that the roster talent level will be pretty comparable. I'm going to lean towards Cam Ward in this game. I think that they actually end up losing that game, does Florida State. However, get back to your winning ways. You beat North Carolina, and then you go to Notre Dame. Huge playoff impact kind of game for them, for Mike Norvell, getting a signature win on the road in South Bend. When Notre Dame has done, everything they can to continue to evolve and push the envelope and get to where they expect to be in the college football landscape, that'd be massive. I think it happens in this game. I think you beat Notre Dame, and at that point, you're feeling pretty good about your college football playoff aspirations because you only have one loss. It's to what I would expect to be a pretty solid Miami team. You beat Charleston, and then you play Florida. Florida is going to be interesting to watch where they're at in this point in the season. I still think they're going to be scrappy. I think you're going to get your best game from Florida regardless of who's on the other side. Even with that being said, I think Florida State beats Florida, and they finish with a record of 11-1. They have a chance to go back to the ACC title game, I have to believe. And they also, whether they win or lose the ACC title game, they lock up a college football playoff spot. And so if you're a Seminole fan, you're like, okay, last year was last year, 12-team dance, we're in it. We hit the reset on the roster in a lot of ways based on what we lost last year. And Mike Norvell does exactly what we're telling you that they need to do in 2024. They boss up, new personnel. The common denominator is Coach Norvell. So you feel even better about the fact that he's your head coach, and you feel, I think, probably reinvigorated heading to the college football playoff and have some business to handle once you get there. So, again, Florida State at 11-1, but let me know what your record prediction is for the Noles in 2024. The fact that we're actually talking about, like, wins and losses and actual games for teams coming up, that's special. Again, 400 some odd hours. That's it. Until we get week 0 college football between Florida State and I think I said it was, oh, darn it. I think I messed this up there, boys. I think I told you that they play Georgia Tech. I believe that Florida State actually plays Navy. Yeah. Or no, they play Georgia Tech. All right, I'm tripping. I was thinking about last year's game. All right, we're all out of sorts, but we're good. We're back. We're good. Week 0 for everybody. Okay, we'll keep a good thing going here. So Florida State, just to confirm there, they play Georgia Tech in Dublin, and that'll be a lot of fun. A little ACC action to get the party started. How about that? All right, so I want us to have this discussion together. Oklahoma fans, let's talk. Let's talk, because we're doing our record predictions right now, as you well know, and I gave you my record prediction on Oklahoma. I have them going 6-6. Vegas has the over-under at 7.5. Now, when I put this prediction out, we heard from everybody of Sooner Nation and then some in my mentions, in the comment section, of my direct messages. Like, we heard from y'all. You're frustrated. I understand you're frustrated, and that's part of the reason why we actually have a fair amount of affection for the Oklahoma fan base. There is buy-in. There is passion. Like, we love that. We absolutely love that. But let's have a discussion here. Let's have a little heart-to-heart. I'll start with this. Oklahoma fans, we have some history together. And a lot of y'all know what I'm talking about. Before we were fortunate enough to do the hard count here at this desk with On 3, we did this show pseudo-independently with another company in a lobby in Waco, Texas. And when we were building that channel, I mean, it was like grassroots from the ground floor. We're cranking out videos, giving you our opinions as we do right now, trying to develop an audience, trying to see what sticks, trying to see who will listen to our opinions, essentially. And the Oklahoma faithful were the very first fan base to give us some traction, to kind of buy into what we're doing here, to believe in us, and to give us some momentum. Like, I would argue that I don't know if we are fortunate to do this job full time now if Oklahoma doesn't jump on the bandwagon with us with the show, The Hard Count, in the early days. And that was when, like, Caleb Williams had just taken over the job. That was the year where Lincoln Riley left for USC and Brent Venables gets hired and all those things. Y'all embraced us. So thank you for that. But we have some history. We go back quite a bit. The frustration seems to be around this prediction, not so much that you disagree, because I think that the whole 6-6 thing is like, you're entitled to your opinion, just like we're entitled to our opinion. And if you disagree, you disagree, and that's totally fine. The interesting frustration point, I think, is that a lot of y'all are like, well, hey, JD, you keep telling us what we could be. You say we could do this, we could do that, we could win 8 games, we could win 10 games. However, though, you put us at 6-6, and the conclusion that some of y'all came to is like, this guy just hates Oklahoma. This guy just hates Boomer Sooner Nation. I'm like, whoa, let's pump the brakes a little bit here. Let's look in reverse for a second. Go back to last year. Everyone's talking down on Brent Venables. If he has a bad year, he's on the hot seat. What's Oklahoma going to be? Like, they're definitely not going to be, cut out for the SEC when they get there. 6-7 this, 6-7 that. Told everybody that would listen. Brent Venables is 1, the right guy for the job. 2, they lost a lot of close games. And 3, I had y'all at 10-2 last year. Okay, so if there was a reason for us to be down on Oklahoma, missed the memo last year. All right, so that's all I'll say on that. I'm very much so not down on Oklahoma. I just want to make sure we're clear on that. I'm not down on Oklahoma. I'm not even down on this year's Oklahoma. Look at what they have on the roster. I've told you, I think they have one of the best wide receiver rooms in the country. I love the defense. I love what Brent Venables brings to the table. My questions, though, are very obvious. They're the same questions that y'all probably have. What's up with Jackson Arnold? What's up with the offensive line? First-year starting quarterback in the SEC, replaced pretty much all 5 of the offensive linemen. And the schedule's really hard. Like, that's the big thing. If you took this team and copied and pasted it back into the Big 12, Oklahoma fans would be like, what? Why'd y'all do that? We want to be in the SEC. So there's that. But also, if you were to take this team and put it in the Big 12, I think it'd be a 9-10 win team. I'd have a hard time not putting Oklahoma back in the Big 12 championship game. Just so we're all aligned there. But since you're in the SEC, and since you have the schedule that you have, I have question marks. And that's where we sit here in August. We have question marks. And that's kind of what this part of the year is for, is to have some desire to learn, to call it as we see it right now. And then as we get more information, we'll develop our opinion, which we are grateful to be able to do. If you could promise me without a shadow of a doubt that Jackson Arnold would give you B+ to A- quarterback play, and the same deal for the offensive line, I'd say, okay, well, Oklahoma's probably a, 10-win team. Maybe better, we'll see. Top 10, top 15 team, we'll see. And that's been reflected in what I think of them preseason. I have them right there in the top 20. Like that, we think Oklahoma, from a roster perspective, is pretty solid. But the unproven parts with the schedule that they have makes us a little bit concerned. Because at the end of the day, it comes down to the swing games for Oklahoma when you talk about their record. Like whatever you think about them against Tennessee, when they're at Auburn, against Missouri, and at LSU, probably determines what your final record for them is predicted to be. So, again, if you can tell me Jackson Arnold's going to be 10 out of 10, offensive line is going to be 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, great. Then those are probably a situation where they're going 4-0 in that game or 4-0 in that stretch, and, like, we'll see what happens at the end of the year. But, again, I am much more wait and see right now when it comes to Oklahoma. Because when it comes to 2024, I've said a couple of things. The context for them is extremely, extremely crucial. Extremely crucial. First-year quarterback, new offensive line, most difficult conference in college football. That has to be accounted for. Has to be accounted for. I've said I think they're one of the most volatile teams in college football. I've said on radio multiple times, I think they're one of the most intriguing and difficult teams to get a gauge for. Because as much as I have question marks about those units and those positions, again, I love the defense. I love the leadership. I love the skill players. You can get the ball to Deion Burks, like the good times are rolling for you in Norman, right? Like I don't question those pieces. But the first part of the equation is the offensive line and the quarterback. That's where every play starts. Okay, so having question marks around that is why we have them what we have them in the preseason. Okay? I've said this a couple times, I'll reemphasize this right now. Regardless of this year, Brent Venables is your guy. If we end up being right and they go 6-6, there's going to be a lot of folks saying Brent Venables this, Brent Venables that. Is he the right guy? It's not what we're talking about on this show. He brings the right culture. He brings the toughness. He brings the edge on defense. He's going to recruit his tail off. He gets Oklahoma. Like all those things line up for me to where if they go 6-6 their first year in the SEC with a new quarterback and a new offensive line, big whoop. New play caller, who cares? I'm not out on Oklahoma. This year is a transitional year in my mind. And if we're wrong, we will be the first ones to say we're wrong, and we'll talk about it, and we'll have a good discourse back and forth between y'all. But I just wanted to make sure we got aligned here. Oklahoma fans, there's no reason to have some animosity and think that we're not down on your football team, all right? We love y'all. We love the Sooners. We love Oklahoma. But we're going to call it how we see it, regardless of the kickback we do or don't get, all right? So we appreciate y'all. Hope y'all can appreciate that. And we appreciate y'all just bringing the passion that we have come to love y'all for. Again, man, the mentions were on fire. There's no way. The mentions were just, or something else. Or something else. But we appreciate y'all for that nonetheless. All right, let's keep a good thing rolling, man. Last segment here for y'all. What's Auburn going to be in 2024? Let's call our shot here on the record prediction for the Tigers, man. The over-under win total for them is at 7.5. Last year, make a bowl game. Let's progress. Bowl game didn't go how you wanted it to. You have the black eye of the New Mexico State game. It is what it is. Enter into year 2, though, of the Hugh Freeze era. Hugh Freeze and this staff deserve a lot of credit for how quickly they flipped that roster. Like, it is very obvious for anyone that has watched Auburn Tiger football, from what they were previously to what they were last year, that coaching staff came in with a plan. They knew what they were walking into. Sometimes you see guys, staffs more specifically, just kind of go machete mode instead of surgery mode. And what I mean by that is, like, they're just taking anybody they can through the portal. They're chopping things up. They're just throwing stuff at the wall and trying to see what sticks. I don't think that was Auburn football last year. Did they have everything they needed? No. But give a lot of credit to that personnel staff, man, because the way that they got things in a row, in a hurry, a lot of credit to Will Redmond and that staff out there because they did a phenomenal job personnel-wise getting them in position to be competitive. And people want to dismiss Auburn because of what Peyton Thorne didn't do last year. We'll talk about that more in a second. Did we not see flashes last year from Auburn? And I get the New Mexico State game as a negative data point. But we also, I think, would be irresponsible to not at least consider the other really positive data points. There's no moral victories. We talked to Peyton Thorne about that as well, but like, man, you played Georgia down to the very last drive. You had the ball with a chance to go and win the game against Georgia. That has to count for something in year one, right? The Alabama game. 4th and 31 will live in infamy in Auburn, Alabama for a very long time. Can't say there's not some credit you got to give that roster for playing them that tight. I think you do. Those are two of the best teams in college football. One that made the playoff, one that I think was good enough to win the national championship if they had been healthy in Georgia. It is what it is. But people will dismiss Auburn. We say this a lot on this show because they think they know without a shadow of a doubt what Peyton Thorne is going to be. That's their opinion. They think Peyton Thorne, what you saw last year, is what you're going to get this upcoming season. I would flip that thought on its head and say, well, why don't you think Peyton Thorne's going to progress? Why are you so certain that what we saw last year from Peyton Thorne at Auburn, which again is very different than what we saw from Michigan State in a larger sample size, why do you think he's going to stay at the level he was at last year? I would argue that there are two things, just in life, period, that equate to more success. One is experience. Peyton Thorne now gets more experience. Played last season, took his lumps, got spring football, gets another fall camp, more experience. That should benefit you. The second thing, though, that equates to more success is more help. All of us with more help, we're just better at our jobs. You get more support on your team. You get a better manager. You get better this, you get better that. Any support you get around you in football, in your work, in life, whatever it is, you're going to be better. That's Peyton Thorne. I know Cam Coleman's a freshman. He's a freak show. He's going to be a dog for you. Keandre Lambert-Smith played a lot of football. He's really good. He's going to be a dog for him. Rivaldo Fairweather, NFL tight end. You have more help if you're Peyton Thorne. That's going to equate, I believe, to more success. Go back to those two games against Georgia. Say Peyton Thorne, he's not going to be the guy to get Auburn to where they need to be. Are we sure we're asking Peyton Thorne to be the guy to elevate Auburn? You got to ask him to do his job, but like, y'all, they had Alabama. They had that game won. It wasn't Peyton Thorne out there on 4th and 31. And here's the thing. Peyton Thorne threw for less than 100 yards in both those games, and they still played both those teams to a score. I'm not saying Peyton Thorne has to light the world on fire, win the Heisman Trophy. If he just does his job within the structure and confines of this offense, Auburn's going to have a chance now. They are going to have a chance. So let's go game by game here, man. Alabama to start the year. Alabama A&M, relax. You know, Alabama, those of y'all that were like, what is he talking about? That's a win. You got Cal, that's a win. Again, you're glad to have them at home. New Mexico will be a win. Arkansas, early in the year, one of those games, kind of a gotta have it for Hugh Freeze and company. That's a win. Now you have Oklahoma in Auburn. I'll tell you right now, this is a game that I believe that building has circled, that they are fired up for. This is their chance to make a statement, I believe, to all of college football in front of their home crowd. We're different this year. I know what you saw last year. This is a different organization this year. Statement win for Auburn in that game over Oklahoma. We're going to go ahead and call it right now. So they're undefeated now, going to Georgia. They played Georgia close last year at home. I've told you many times, I think Georgia is on a mission this year. I'm not looking for Auburn to win that football game. I think they lose this football game. However, I'm looking at how far away is Auburn a second year. Because you can catch fire, you can catch lightning in a bottle any given Saturday and play a team tight. New Mexico State's a great example of that if you're an Auburn fan. And like, New Mexico State has no business hanging with us. Auburn hung with Georgia last year. Once is nice. If you do it twice, though, that adds validity to what happened last year, to how close you did play them last year. So I'm not saying you got to go beat Georgia. I don't think they do beat Georgia this year, but how close they play them, I think, is a great litmus test, a great measuring stick for what Hugh Freeze is doing out there on the Plains. So I think you lose that game. Now, this is a game that I think is kind of flying under the radar. They go to Missouri. They go to Missouri off a bye. Missouri right now getting a lot of top 10 buzz, deservedly so. I think this is one of those games that Auburn gets in there with a game plan from another stratosphere, from Hugh Freeze, and they are dialed in. They go in there and they beat Missouri. And this is one of those games now. We talk a lot about marketable moments on the recruiting trail, moments that you can point to when you're trying to sell a 5-star or a 4-star and say, hey, this is where this is headed. This is the small sample size. This is kind of the appetizer. We need you here to make this a routine thing. Think they win that football game. Now, the week after, though, they go to Kentucky. Major letdown spot after an emotional win. Tough place to play. Stoops & Co. is going to be a gritty outfit. I think you actually lose that game. But you beat Vanderbilt. You beat ULM. Texas A&M, I think, is going to be a tricky game. I think you actually lose that one. One where you get towards the end of the season, and Mike Elko and company are going to be tough as well. Kind of a toss-up, but let's say you lose that game. You go to Alabama. I think that Jalen Milroe will be another specimen this year. I think he's going to be on another planet this year. I think you lose that game with it being in Tuscaloosa. But at the end of the day, man, like, I think 9-3 is extremely attainable right now in August. I'm going to put them at 8-4. But let's be very clear. 8-4 does the job for you this year if you're Hugh Freeze and company. 8-4 creates the momentum you need, the inertia you need to take on the recruiting trail, land, I believe, somewhere in the neighborhood. It may not be exactly in the neighborhood of a top 5 class. And then the vision in the future going forward, forget on the recruiting trail. Internally, that is crystal clear. Crystal clear. Not just from the wins and losses perspective, but the way they play these teams. The way they play the Alabamas, the Georgias, 2 years in a row. The way they play Missouri, who's going to be a top 10 team. I think that is something that you point to and say, all right, going forward, this is who we are. This is what we're about. And there's no more dreaming it up. There's no more, oh, we're so close. It's like, okay, there's real proof of concept here. There is real, like, footprints for where we want to go. Not enough of them, but there's some reason to believe we can accomplish what we want to accomplish, which is ultimately win conference titles and compete for college football playoff berth. So Auburn, we got them at 8-4. Could see 9-3. We'll say 8-4 right now with some excitement towards the future on the Plains. Auburn hiring Hugh Freeze, I believe we're going to look back as one of those landmark moments of, okay, that was when the tide turned. That was when things really started to click for Auburn. Everyone pulling the same direction. Roster is, I think, getting closer to where they want it to be, where they need it to be. It's one of those teams, man, especially if they do end up winning 9 games, rocket fuel. 8-4 is some real juice now, but 9-3 would be rocket fuel. All right? Hey, we appreciate y'all being tuned in, man. Thank y'all for making this show what it is. I put the call to action out yesterday, but if you're watching towards the end of the show, this means that you're an absolute junkie, so we appreciate y'all for that. Send me your birthday. Sounds a little bit weird, but it's just something we want to do to celebrate the folks that tune into this show. We want to give y'all a birthday shout out during this show. So my man Bailey, his birthday was yesterday. We shouted him out on yesterday's show. So Bailey, again, hope it was a good one. But if you're tuned in right now and you got a birthday coming up, let me know. Get at me on the socials. Get at me on Instagram and on Twitter at JD Piquel, and let us know so we can celebrate with y'all. But man, we appreciate y'all. Again, college football right around the corner. Florida State playing Georgia Tech. They do not play Navy. So it's going to be a lot of fun, man. We cannot wait. Cannot wait to have the greatest college football season of all time with y'all. Subscribe on your way out of here. But for Nick Brake producing the show, for myself, JD Piquel, we appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time.